Hello, I'm Rushil Khurana, and today I'm going to talk about challenges and opportunities in adaptive sports. With recent advancements in devices, there has been an uptick in data analytics for sports. This has led to improvements in athletic performance, training, building better team strategies, and even improved refereeing. And despite the fact that Paralympic Games have officially been organized since 1948, there has been a lack of technological innovation that caters to this community. For example, something as simple as a step counter available on your phone or your watch is unable to measure the push of a wheelchair with precision, making one of the most basic and widely used statistics inaccessible. So, the goal of our project was to understand challenges and opportunities to improve the accessibility of adaptive sports and gather analytics. To do so, we conducted semi structured interviews with 18 different participants in different roles, sports, and different kinds of disabilities. In particular, we recruited participants from wheelchair basketball, wheelchair rugby, para powerlifting, wheelchair tennis, blind hockey, and beepball. It includes athletes, coaches, data analysts, and team managers. We also talked to a sports wheelchair manufacturer. We conducted thematic analysis on four different groups. First, we take a look at all sports combined, then at blind sports, followed by wheelchair based sports, and finally sports that require a lot of equipment to understand challenges unique to each group. More than half of the adaptive sports were underfunded and struggled to obtain resources such as permanent staff members. Some sports organizations did not even have access to proper playing fields. For wheelchair sports, the wheelchairs are customized for each athlete and could cost several thousand dollars. These resource and financial constraints impede the ability of adaptive sports to grow, gain popularity, and attract more people to participate. There have been dozens of studies composed of years of research into understanding aspects of a sport and building technology to support its needs. However, this R&D process typically focuses on able-bodied sports and does not take into account specific issues faced in adaptive sports. One athlete stated, "Currently, there is no tracking via technology. It's mostly me and my coaches staying in tune with my body and my training currently." Next, we take a look at blind sports. A unique addition to blind sports is the use of technology, particularly sound sensors, to make them adaptive. For example, the puck in blind hockey is hollow with a ball bearing inside that makes a noise so that the athletes can listen and track it. These pucks, however, don't have any longevity and break easily. Similar issues have been described with equipment used in b-ball. The bases that make sound are wired, and when someone steps on it, it gets damaged, needs repair, and that happens quite often. Training aid developed for able bodied sports rely on visual cues, and the coaches have to come up with clever makeshift tools to teach novices some basic skills. For example, in blind hockey, to teach ice skating, balancing, coaches have to use makeshift aids such as a wiffle ball retrofitted with bells attached to the skates, and the audio cues from the bells are used by novices to perfect their balancing and skating. Another challenge that emerged was the difficulty for multiple players to practice together. When a sound-o-matic puck is in close vicinity, it causes confusion and disorientation for players playing next to each other. The challenge of accessibility is not unique to learning a new skill, but also impacts developing strategies for games. The whiteboard game tape paradigm used in able bodied sports is inaccessible. A para coach said a coach in an able bodied sport might show where he wants to line up and then he'll put X's and or he's doing a play at a timeout. He'll tell his players where to position. It's a visual thing. Well, we can't use that. Next, we look at wheelchair based sports. Wheelchair based sports, on an average, are at a slightly better stage than blind sports. The basic gameplay is accessible, there are sufficient training aids, their need stems from tracking and gathering analytics. A typical national team selection process or training camp in wheelchair based sports rely on evaluating sprints, measuring and assessing athletes on core criteria such as push mechanic, speed, and agility. There is also a definite lack of adaptive sports data, which impedes the ability of a para athlete to track their specific tendencies and its impact on the sport. Next, wheelchairs designed for athletes are customized and thus expensive. Typically, a wheelchair manufacturer would work with an athlete to figure out settings, proper inclines based on their athletic tendencies, and so on. However, there is a lack of data driven process to capture what settings are optimal. The manufacturer said What's the right equipment? What's the right chair profile? Do you need to have a certain amount of dump based on your spinal cord injury? Are you going to have ergonomic seating versus standard? All of these things make a difference in how the wheelchair is customized. The participant also stated that they have specific training goals, and the wheelchair setup is a big component in helping them achieve those goals. For example, a manager said if you're not in the right chair setup, it can affect your speed, it can affect your push, it can affect everything if it's not the right fit or chair setup. And currently, the coach or the wheelchair manufacturer provides support to assess if customizations will help improve an aspect of the athlete's game. However, this process currently happens in an ad hoc manner without much underlying data to support the decision making process. Lastly, we look at adaptive sports that require a lot of equipment to play. The first theme that emerged from our data is improper training methods. Athletes are evaluated on the precision across several factors in para powerlifting. Most of the time, the athletes are spread across the country and train remotely. They use video recording softwares or video coaching to solicit feedback from the coach. And this method is prone to errors. The coaches are not able to provide adequate feedback at all times, which may lead to failure in competitions. And in this group, the participants explicitly expressed interest in instrumenting the equipment to capture the data to improve their training. For example, an athlete in para powerlifting said, okay, one of the things I was thinking about is developing some type of device that they could put or insert on the bench to measure what muscles are being engaged in order to lift the weight at the correct speed in order to generate the most power. Well, I feel that if it's on the bench, it can be a little more universal and it could keep the cost a bit lower because I know that if it's a body mechanism, then you may have to deal with changing pads, wires, and stuff like that. It may be uncomfortable to have a lot of wires and stuff connected to you. The need for equipment instrumentation was further seen in our next theme of longitudinal behavior tracking. All participants viewed equipment instrumentation as a necessary means to the goal of tracking behaviors such as the physical and geometrical implications of not being able to use legs to generate powers in wheelchair tennis when taking a shot, or deviation in bar path based on the angle of the elbow in para powerlifting. The participants also stated that this data may be useful to convince others to reflect on their current practices. Based on our findings, we also identified several opportunities such as tracking wheelchair health, smart equipment based analytics, or smart training aids. Please read our paper for more details on how we as a community can take immediate steps to improve adaptive sports.